I'm Bill Oliva with Wisconsin Department of Transportation. I've been with Wisconsin DOT for just about 23 years now, serving in a number of roles, doing bridge design, hydraulics, 10 years as a project development supervisor, doing the design and construction of our projects throughout our state, and most recently for the past almost 5 years as the Chief of Structures Development. So we have automation policy and standards, bridge management, bridge rating, and oversized overweight permit. So that's quite a circus to keep up on. But as all of you, it's I would imagine it's a very rewarding and fun career. Where I'd like to start out with is with Wisconsin DOT's our process as we relate to our Bridge Management Next Generation project. And a lot of it was really driven by MAP 21, the federal legislation, and I think that's probably changed a lot of the landscape for all of us out there. With MAP 21 came a bunch of stuff, the mandate to adopt the new bridge management elements, condensing funding programs, so our historic segregated bridge program kind of went away, and we were lumped in with the overall transportation programs. Sufficiency rating pretty much has gone away from the federal perspective. The percent of deficient bridges that we have on the NHS can now affect federal funding, so that's a big issue. As now we're competing with the other transportation disciplines, roadway and other, we've got to better justify the infrastructure investment that we make for bridges, and requirements for data and performance-driven goals and approach. And of late, as you've all seen, the requirements of federal highways for all the DOTs to develop, adopt, and use transportation asset management plans. So many of us, to some extent, have been operating either very comprehensive asset management plans or bits and pieces of it, but now we've really got to have a very well-defined asset management plan. So about 4 years ago, we put together a team within Wisconsin DOT from Scott Becker, our director of our Bureau of Structures, down through a lot of the key staff, as well as Jose Aldayuz with Michael Baker, who assisted us with some of the preservation aspects. What's not reflected here is during our process to develop our bridge preservation and asset management approach, we really pulled a lot on our regional bridge maintenance engineers. Their perspectives and experience and things of that nature was really critical. And there were a whole bunch of people in our regional offices that helped. What we had envisioned 4 years ago was, again, kind of a comprehensive approach to this that was going to incorporate a lot of the federal requirements. So we integrated in the new bridge inspection elements. We've got about 10 years of element inspection with the core elements, but we got going with the inspections in 2014, and we actually began reporting in 2015 on time. So we're pretty happy about that. We developed a preservation policy guide that really pulled a lot on the experience of our bridge maintenance engineers and inspectors, their experiences, as well as what we wanted to achieve as far as program goals. And we're going to look at that a little bit closely, but we published the final version of that just last June and sent it off to our Federal Highway Division office for their review and comment. Also within that, we did a lot of updates to our bridge management system. In Wisconsin, we've kind of got a homegrown bridge management system that we call Highway Structure Information System, or HSIS. So we did a lot of updates to that to incorporate the new elements and additional functionality with the ability for inspectors to use mobile devices and very web-driven application there. With that also, we did and are developing kind of a tool to help us identify and program bridge projects, from preservation activities through rehabilitation up through the improvement program. But all of it was aimed at this global goal of kind of a policy and data-driven bridge investment approach and performance goals. So each of these pieces of this triangle unto themselves are very valuable. You know, it was kind of a modular approach to building a comprehensive bridge management program. So as we built this piece by piece, as you can see, it kind of was working us to that big goal of asset management. Let's see, changes in the preservation policy. One of the big challenges, was to identify desirable and common Wisconsin actions. You know, and again, drawing on the experience of our staff, what did we want to do and start moving forward on preservation? And that has been a very underfunded and unrecognized program in Wisconsin. So we looked at this as our opportunity to develop that, to document, and to sell it, both internally to our department, our business managers, our investment managers, but also externally to Federal Highways to get their buy-in. You know, with that, we developed some goals, preservation rules, and methods of developing what those needs are. We wanted to identify, you know, what the cost-effective program-level actions were. So instead of a worst first or bridge by bridge, what kind of themes could we go after that were going to make a difference and a measurable difference? And then develop support in the funding from, again, our financial people as well as Federal Highways. The main goal of the bridge preservation program was, as I believe it is for all of us, is to maximize the useful life of bridges in a very cost-effective way. And a lot of that centers on applying the right treatments at the right time, not waiting for necessarily a condition-driven issue, but what action should we be taking to get in front of some of the condition issues out there and maximize that life cycle. A lot of it centers around the differences between preservation and preventative maintenances, and us really kind of recognizing the differences where preventative maintenance was really aimed at maintaining and improving functional condition, with the bridge preservation actions really they emphasize more of getting in front of and preventing deterioration, delaying deterioration, and reducing it overall. You know, getting in front of some of these issues before the onset of it. In Wisconsin, as far as bridge condition of our state bridges, we're not doing too bad. Overall, we've got 3%, of them in poor condition, and about 42% in fair condition, and the rest, in good condition. To us, the real issue with preservation was to get after these fair ones and look more granularly at it. And you can see, based on the NBIs of those fair condition, we had most of them that were kind of leaning towards the poor, 23%. So really, it is this slice over here that preservation actions really needed to start focusing on, so we keep those from falling into the poor condition. So again, taking control of the condition. So with those goals and our understanding of the condition of our inventory, working with our team and with Jose's help from Baker International, we started developing our preservation guide. What we were out to do is employ long-term strategies and practices at the network level to preserve the condition of bridges and extend their life, to get some tools and processes to identify what those treatments are, and again, promote getting the sustained and adequate resources to do those actions. We wanted to keep the bridges in a state of good repair, implement timely preservation treatments on our structurally sound bridges. So again, try to move ourselves out of that worst first type of mentality and start making investment in good bridges to keep them that way. We also wanted to limit impacts to traffic operations. So as we have condition-driven issues that start to affect our decisions about when projects occur, or remove our ability to decide when those projects are, we wanted to better ensure and remove some of those operational risks. Wanted to support the budgeting again. Wanted to develop some performance goals and be able to monitor those relevant to this, and again, just optimize the overall effectiveness of the program. So from a goal standpoint, working and looking at what we had as far as condition of our inventory, we kind of went through and chose some goals that we think were realistic, that we could go after, that we could measure, and that we could affect change to. So some of the big goals that we have are to maintain the bridges in good or fair condition. We wanted 95% of those bridges to stay in good and fair condition. And currently, this whole policy is relevant to the state system, but ultimately, we envision moving into a policy that helps our locals also, and hopefully some decisions along that line. Also, we wanted to maintain bridge decks in good and fair condition, 95% of those. We wanted to address expansion joints. We wanted to keep them in a condition state of 2 or better, and that'd be 90% of all of the joints, out there. Maintain coated steel surfaces in a condition state 2 or better, 90% of those. Maintain bearings in a condition state of 2 or better, 95% of those. And then seal eligible concrete decks with an NBI of 6 or higher, with sealants at least every 4 years. And we wanted to do 25% of the eligible bridges in that. Currently we really don't have a very effective sealing program out there, so we thought this would be kind of ambitious, start to that. So all these targets and goals potentially will be adjusted as we go forward and learn and start to make these investments. But this is kind of where we drew the line in the sand from a performance standpoint. So to do this, and kind of the nuts and bolts of the preservation policy, start here in identifying the components on the bridge, the types of actions, whether it's preventative maintenance, repairs, or rehab, the activities that we would do, if they were cyclical or not, and what kind of frequency we would do these actions. So here you see just a piece of the table, or one of the tables that we have in there. But you can kind of see that, from our experience and the input of our maintenance engineers, and it took them quite a while, and again, working with Jose to bring in some of the national perspective, which I think represents your states as well, to some extent. We, set some targets in there as far as when these actions should occur, whether they are condition-based or cyclical. Let's see, and then you'll also notice in here we have an eligibility matrix. I don't know if you can see that too well, but it starts to speak about the condition of some of the components and elements, and the level of distress, and some of the choices that we would have in doing work, and then what the expected benefit would be to that. And just to take a little bit closer look at that, and I think you might have noticed already, we're kind of mixing and matching NBI and element level information in here. Until we get to a number of cycles of new element inspection, we're kind of forced to be in that realm. But ultimately, most all of this should represent element level type of decisions and criteria. But again, we're mixing and matching to some extent right now. What's kind of interesting in here, and looking a little bit closely at it, for the concrete decks and slabs, for example, you've got the NBI for the 58 and different condition levels of that, whether it's 7 or greater or 6 or below. But in there's a number of preservation activities that you could take, and depending on the condition of that, it's going to open or close windows on some of the actions that you might take there. And then what also is important is kind of an understanding of what the benefit would be of taking those actions, as well as the application frequency. Looking at the superstructure, you can see some of these actions, and depending on the condition of the super, there are some things that you will or won't do. For example, you'll see based off of the condition state and the amount of element that's in that condition state, you might go from spot painting to zone painting to complete painting. And then it should indicate what the resulting condition state is for that element after we do that action. And again, the anticipated service life of that action. So these criterion tables, though they appear kind of maybe not simplistic, but straightforward. They really serve as kind of a basis for making some uniform decisions across our whole system as far as the actions that we want to take based off of the conditions that are out there. And it kind of sets it up pretty logically. You know, there could be some things that fall outside of this realm, but overall in operating the system, we feel that this type of approach gives us a basis to do it quite systematically as we go forward. So program changes. So now that we've got the information, the new elements, we've got preservation policy that gives us criteria on what we should do when based off of that information from the inspectors. You know, so we've got a data-driven approach on what we want to do, how to group these potentially, things of that nature. As far as implementation of the work, to get it into a program. And part of this, you know, initially when we started this project, we were really focused at preservation actions that were relatively unfunded in Wisconsin. So that was the big goal for us then. As this moved forward and asset management and other issues came forth, both at the federal and the state level, the door kind of creaked open on us having a larger impact on our overall bridge programs in Wisconsin. So not only would we potentially be asking for money for preservation and programming preservation projects and getting a funded preservation program, but the door actually opened for us to have influence on helping our financial people program the overall projects. And it all stemmed from this policy for bridge preservation. So in Wisconsin in the past, you know, we really had only about 6 types of projects that would get programmed financially within our financial systems. Bridge replacement, bridge elimination, new bridges, rehab of decks with overlays, rehab of deck replacement, and other. And probably that other was kind of a catch-all. What is being instigated right now are a much more granular program that our financial people have bought into that speaks to many, many more actions that they're willing to recognize and support and fund as we go forward. You know, including various types of concrete overlays, various types of bridge rehabilitation, maintenance, and preservation actions, repair of joints. So we've got the ability now to have a much more granular program that's accepted by our programming people, by our project development staff, that we can go forth and implement. And now we can actually track these things now that they're really part of our financial systems. As far as querying what actions occurred in past years now, we'll have the ability to go back and track that with a lot more detail. So in that respect, we're very happy about that. Some of the follow-up actions that we have are working with our Federal Highway Division office on revising our preventative maintenance agreement. And actually, I think we're probably going to have to change the title to be much more inclusive of preservation as well as maintenance activities. So we've given our preservation policy to the feds for review and comment, and we're looking forward to working with them on revision of this agreement that will, again, help strengthen and support the ability to fund these activities. What we lacked in the past to some extent was a systematic process to implement these, and now this preservation policy, I believe, gives us just that. So the goals of bridge management next generation do include program level investment based on preservation policy and modeling, project level identification to support regional planning, funding, and implementation. So with this data, with these policies, we're able to identify program level, aggregate in given years what type of actions that we will want to take, make recommendations to our department level investment people as far as planning for investment, but also develop very discrete lists of projects for our regional offices as far as a recommendation. You know, in the end, I don't think they're going to take all of these recommendations verbatim and implement them, but I think it gives them an extremely good starting point as far as developing and understanding what projects they should be considering for inclusion in the improvement program. And that's what I have. So that's preservation policy in our next generation project in Wisconsin. Any questions?
Nice presentation, Bill. One question I have is you have this agreement with the FHWA, but there's not a federal highway bridge program anymore. I really, wondering why. I don't really see the feds having much, or do they still have say-so whether we can do this? I mean, I think we can do it.
Well, that's a good question. I guess my assumption is that we still want their buy-in and support in that. And based off of some other references, I think that they still have some approval on how we're using the federal dollars. Maybe another comment over here?
For Larry O'Donnell. Oh, there he is. I really don't want to speak for Federal Highway, having a Federal Highway person here. But my understanding is that MAP 21 didn't, I guess, null the need for an agreement, because if you don't have that, you have to go to Federal Highway for permission for each one of those projects. And this will just give you I guess, a bundle blessing to not have to do that. Is that correct, Larry?
You're right. You have to have.
Yeah.
You have to have project by project basis. Or if you have an approved agreement, then you can just use federal money for maintenance and preservation projects.
I'll say specifically, it goes in Missouri where we do in-house maintenance work. If we want to recuperate and use federal funds to recuperate that expense, we have to have the agreement ourselves too.
Yep. All right. Any other questions? All right. Thanks.